morning, students. This morning we shall take up a short story by Ruskin Bond, and the title of the story is A Face in the Dark. Now, Bond has made this particular story very short and simple in terms of plot and language use. So the plot is very simple and the language is also very simple. The author has made a simple plot, a simple plot and a very ordinary setting. But he has made it look extraordinary by giving it a supernatural touch. Alright? So a very ordinary plot and setting is made to look extraordinary by giving it a supernatural touch. And you will find the supernatural atmosphere is created by the elements like the eerie sounds of the pine trees and the batteries of the torch running down, the flickering light of the torch, and the silent sobbing of the boy, and the lantern swinging in the middle of the path, and so on. Alright? So he has created a supernatural atmosphere by making use of some of these descriptions that give it a supernatural touch. Alright. Now let's look at the story in short or in a summary. Okay. The setting of A Face in the Dark by Ruskin Bond is similar. A hill town in Himachal Pradesh, where an Anglo-Indian teacher, Mr. Oliver, teaches in a reputed English public school, which is regarded as the Eton of the East. Now, Eton of the East. So it was regarded as the Eton of the East. Now what is this Eton? Eton was a college or a public school that was set up by Henry VI. Henry VI, it was an elite public school. An elite public school, or you can call it a college, set up by King Henry VI of England in the year 1440. Alright? So it was one of the renowned schools in England, or the colleges in England, meant for the elite, the aristocracy. Okay. Now, as regards why this reference, because this particular school that was set up in Simla was meant for the education of the Indian elite, or the aristocracy, people from noble families, people from royal families, pupils from such a high society studied in this particular school. Okay. Now, so I said the story is set in Shimla, a hill town in Himachal Pradesh, where an Anglo-Indian teacher, Mr. Oliver, teaches in a reputed English public school, which is regarded as the Eton of the East. Alright, so an elite school, a renowned school. Now he is a bachelor and goes to the market some 3 miles away in the evenings and returns back to school at night on a daily basis. Alright? So being a bachelor, he would be bored, and therefore in the evenings he would take a stroll to the market, which was 3 miles away from the school, and then on and return back late in the night. Okay. He takes the shortcut way through the pine forest. So he is described as not a nervous or imaginative person, and therefore he is brave, we can say, and therefore he used to take the path or shortcut through the pine forest, which most people avoided at night. On the day of the story, when he is returning at night, the strong wind is making eerie sounds. What's eerie sound? The sounds that are strange and frightening through the pine trees. And the batteries of his torch is running down. See? So already you get a sense of that supernatural the eerie sound produced by the pine trees or coming from the pine trees because of the wind, and secondly, the batteries of his torch is really running down, and therefore the torch is only flickering. Okay. Suddenly he comes across a boy who is crying silently with his head hung down, sitting on a rock. As he walks through the forest, what does he see? There, in the flickering light of the torch, he notices a boy sitting on a rock and sobbing silently. Alright? Okay. And then, following a number of questions, he questions the boy. He thinks he is one of those miscreants who came out of the school. The children of the school were not allowed to go out after dark. And so he asks him a number of questions. When the boy finally looks up, Mr. Oliver notices that the boy has no eyes, ears, nose or mouth on his face, right? So that terrifies him. When he sees the face of the boy, he notices he had no eyes, no ears, no nose, nor mouth on his face. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. Alright? Okay, all that he saw was a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. Panicked, obviously, he was by this horrifying sight, and Mr. Oliver runs down the path calling for help. He finally stops when he sees the watchman when he sees the watchman swinging the lantern on his way. Right? So he is terrified by this sight of this faceless boy. He runs down the path and towards the direction of the school, and as he runs down, he finds a lantern swinging in the middle of his path, and he notices he stumbles on the watchman. And Oliver tells the watchman what he has seen. But soon after, he finds out in the light of the lantern that the watchman too had no eyes, ears, nose or mouth. See, a double horror. First he notices the boy had no face, no ears, no nose, no eyes or mouth, and now he notices that the watchman too had no eyes, ears, nose or a mouth. It is then the wind blows the lantern or the lamp out. Alright? So that's how the story ends. The story ended with an open end. So the readers are left to arrive at their own conclusion as regards the facelessness of the boy, how this facelessness appeared. Alright? How did Mr. Oliver stumble onto this particular experience or the faceless boy? And the watchman who had no eyes, no ears, no nose or a mouth. Okay? So that is the story in summary. So that's how we summarize this story. And in the next class, what we shall do is, we shall go through the story in detail, and I shall give you a few possible interpretations of this particular story, A Face in the Dark, including what does a face in the dark mean. Because the title, as the title suggests, a face in the dark, naturally is obviously is blurred. A face in the dark is blurred. Or is it just, that is one of the possible interpretations of the title, A Face in the Dark. A face in the dark is obviously blurred. Okay. Now, we shall take up the story in detail, and we shall also look at some of the interpretations of the story in our next class. Alright? We'll meet in the next class.